Welcome to the third part of our installation series. In part 1 and 2, we installed Identity Manager on an admin workstation. We migrated and installed the database, and we edited some services to servers, and we connected an Active Directory to play with some data. In this third session now, we want to talk about web portal installation. That means we will just install all the web portals available for the Identity Manager as they exist on the setup DVD. With that, just follow me to the screen and let's do the last part. In part 1 and 2 of our series, we installed the Identity Manager client tools on our workstation IAMW01. We installed as well the database on our server IMS02, and we installed a server service on IMS03, which was synchronizing the Active Directory from IMS01 directly into the database. Now it's time to start with the business apps, and the business apps of the Identity Manager are the web portals. To do so, I have to start the installation on my IMS03, which is my Internet Information Server. That means the server that should get all of these web portals. To do so, I just sign in to that machine. You can see it here. And the first thing I like to do is to start the setup DVD as always. Therefore, I need the setup DVD, and I can directly run the autorun exe. Here we are. From the installer tool, the only thing I need to do is to click on install and then to run web-based components installer. And with that, I can directly here see a couple of different web portals or web portal types. And what I always should start with is the application server. The application server is something that is necessary in each installation. It is on the one hand side a tool that allows on a REST web server basis to configure a 3-tier architecture for client tools access or server service access. It is on the other hand side something that is always necessary for all the web portals just to allow a full text search, and so I need an application server in every installation. Therefore, I click on next. I have to select my database. If there is no database available, then I have to add a new connection. Nice to see that as well. I need to enter the name of my database server. I need as well to enter the name of my account I want to use, and of course the password. And if that is all correct, then I can drop down here that drop down box and see available databases, for example the Identity Manager database. I hit the finish button. I have now my database connection. I need a system user to enter the database. And now the app server name gets pre-configured together with the rest. An enforce of SSL is necessary to work with that. A Windows authentication for that REST service is perfect. And a SQL authentication to connect to the database is nice. That means all defaults are exactly what I need. Then I can configure all the functions of that specific app server. You see they are all pre-selected. And at least I have to deal with the certificate. I can create a certificate. In this specific case, a certificate already exists on the server, and I'm using the certificate for this specific app server. With next, I have then to determine what's to do in update cases. I use the standard configuration. That means the IIS credentials are used for updates. And the installation starts. Once the installation is done, you can see that here it is time to test this very specific application server. Therefore, I finished the wizard and I switched to my admin workstations because all my tests always happens from an admin workstation. The reason for is that the server security sometimes makes a lot of fun with web fronts, and so it makes sense just to start from the admin workstation. On the admin workstation, I have in my demo environment here a link list where I can just select my different portals from, but I can as well enter the URL. For example, if I want to do that, then I will here use the IMS03, im.corp, and so on. I want to do that now from the linked list because there is less typing, so I'm looking for the app server. Here we are, and if I click on the app server, then automatically the app server gets started. Each initial start of a web portal takes always a little bit longer. Reason for is the complete portal needs to be started. So an username of my Active Directory is necessary, so just the administrator. This is to sign into my Internet Information Server. And if this is done, then you can see there is the system user. That is now the one identity manager where I have to sign in. So I sign in, for example, with my system user. And if I can see then a screen that looks like this, then I'm good, because this is the overview front end of my app server. I can see as well the AP documentation. Remember, the app server, it's a REST-based web service. And I can as well see all of these different entities exist, which allows me to do something with a REST web service. With that, I can just jump back to my web server. On the web server, it is now time just to configure the next web front. Therefore, I hit the installer again. And the next I like to install is our standard web portal. I used the old standard web portal for the first installation, which is install the web portal. And with next, I get a screen which is similar to the old one. That is my database, that is my system user. I have to enter a password. Here we are. Default is Identity Manager as a web application name. And as you can see, there is a Windows authentication pre-configured. That is perfectly for single sign-on. But honestly, in my demo environment, I want to sign in as manager, as user, as auditor, as someone else. And so a single sign-on is the last thing I need. And because of that, I changed to anonymous here, which is a demo feature, and just say next. I have now to configure my application server. And if that returns in green, then I'm good. I have to select the certificate for that specific machine. I will not use the corporate. I will just use the server certificate. Here we are. And with that, it is configured. With next, I can then decide if my binaries gets loaded from the specific setup DVD folder, that is that one here, or from the database. Typically, if the database files are available, that is a good choice. The update, as you can see, is the update from the IIS with the IIS credentials. That is a good choice as well. The web project I selected is the standard web project, which is the standard web portal. That's nice. Here is something where I need authentication. That is for the user registration web. And if this is configured, then I can click next. And what will be created is at the end my standard web portal WebDesigner based. Once that is done, then with next I can step to the screen which allows me to enter the specific URL that will be configured in emails as a return email. That's nice. And I can finish the installation. Having that installed, it's time to test our standard web portal. Therefore, I open my standard web portal. It takes a while to load it. Here it is. And I have to test two things. First of all, to access the standard web portal, and secondly, to access the new user registration portal. We talked about it. I just click on another tab to get this user registration portal started. As you easily can see, here it is. This is user registration. And to start the standard web portal, I just start it again. I have to log in with a specific user account. And what typically happens there is that you get an error message, and that error message is because there is no password yet configured to sign in with an employee. That is, remember, we just synchronized all of our Active Directory accounts. We got identities, and these identities was never configured with a specific password. So what you have to do to sign in here is just to open the manager. Therefore, I need, like always, the Launchpad. And then, as we have seen many times before, underneath of Manage, there is Display and Maintain Content Data. This opens the manager to me. And what I have to do is in the manager to step to the employees, just select my employees. I want to sign in with this Herwig account, so I can select Herwig. And I have to set a very specific password there. This is the easiest way. I can as well use other authentication modules, of course, but the easiest way for my demo environment is just to set here a password. That is something I can do on the miscellaneous tab. There is the system user password, and that is what I have to set. And if this is already configured, then I'm able to sign in back to my web front, log in again. And here we are. This is my standard web portal WebDesigner based. Jumping back to my IMSO3, which is the web server, here we are. I start the install portal again. I get my overview, and this time I will install another web portal. Therefore, I just take here the web portal installer again. If I do so and sign into my database, I get here a warning, and that warning at the end is a warning because Identity Manager exists already as a web application name. And so what I directly do here is I choose another name. For example, I installed something that is called Password Reset, which is my password reset portal. To do so, I start as well with anonymous authentication. That makes sense, especially somebody who wants to reset a password is typically not able to sign in to Active Directory, and so anonymous registration it's great. I just go to the next. I have to configure my application server. Here it is. I have to choose here again my certificate. This is for another web application. Next. And now the interesting part starts. From the database is nice, but I will not use here the web project standard web. This is just another web project. For example, I can use the password web here. And if I do so, I have to determine which type of update. I will use the IIS credentials. And with next, in this very specific case, I have to add something that is called a password token. And that is something I have to configure for some web applications and of course to document because I have to remember it. So I enter my password token and I am able to install here this specific web portal. The difference to the standard web was just to select another web application. All the rest was exactly the same. And with that, I finished the installation, all default, and step to my web workstation just to test that specific portal as well. On the workstation, it is the password portal. Here we are. And it takes a while to get that password portal loaded. And once that is done, then I will see a portal that allows me to reset passwords on Identity Manager accounts and as well on target system accounts. The only thing that is necessary is that the target system is connected to the Identity Manager. Here we are. And of course, you can now sign in with having a passcode, and that is exactly the option if you can't remember your password. Yeah, you will then call support or your manager, and this guy will then just give you a passcode back. And with the passcode, you are able to sign into the system to change your password so that you can later on sign into Active Directory or the other tools as well. So with that, back to the web server, we have some web fronts left. Not too many, of course, more or less 2. I want to show you how to install one of these web services. I take the SOAP-based web service, for example. This is exactly easy. I have to sign into the database. SOAP service is something I will just keep the default. Windows authentication is good with me as well. Update, like always. And that's it. You see, that is one of the easiest parts to get a web service working. And as well, we can test the web service. This time I have to authentify myself because it's a Windows system. And here we are. This is my SOAP-based web service. And the very last thing I want to show you is that if I'm back on my web server again and I start my installation tool again, that there are 2 things left, honestly. One is my API server installation. And the API server, that is the new standard web portal and related. To install that, I have only one application, the API server, which installs all the portals. So I just select the API server. I need to sign into the database, like always. I have to select the data source, which is the database. That's nice. I take the default name. I don't take here the default authentication. Remember, we are not really interested in single sign-on. It's a demo scenario. We want to sign in with different users. So anonymous is nice with me. I have as well to configure the application server for full text search, of course, and to select my certificate. And with the cert, I have then to just configure a second cert. This is not the cert for the app server. This is the cert for the API server. There is an API server cert as well on my machine. If not, you can directly create one. I have as well to select what I want to install, typically everything. The update is the same than always. And I have to enter my password token again. And doing so, I can directly install that specific portal. And once that portal is installed, like always, I can just click Finish and try to test it. That means from my workstation, I will start the API server. And different to the other portals like mentioned, it is that this portal itself gives me an overview and show me all available portals based on the new Angular web development capabilities. That means it is one portal that shows all of them. And here we are. We see the new standard web portal. I can just open the new standard web portal in the background. There is, by the way, as well another password reset portal. Just let's show you the new standard web portal. I can sign in with my employee. Password is the same than I was just configuring. By the way, I can configure as well for other user passwords. That is as well very helpful. And I can do that in bulk operations if I want to. Manager makes it possible. And with that, I'm here in the new standard web portal. That is what I can see there. So it works. And stepping back to my AP server, I can see a lot of more portals. There is the support operations web, another password reset portal. And there's the administration portal I can use to set some configurations. And at least there's an API documentation, and it might be of interest to look into that API documentation as well. And what you see there is, it is a REST service. So it's a Swagger front that shows you at the end what the REST service provides. And the one or the other will wonder why we have an API server and an app server. From a development perspective, it is just an abstraction layer. That means underneath of the API REST service exists the application server REST service. The difference is that the application server, which is our first REST service, just is a REST service based on the database model. That means to deal with that specific application server, you have to know about the data structure in the identity manager. In difference to that, the API documentation, that means the API server, is a REST service which is completely free of this dependence to these database objects and to the data structure. It is just built more or less on a functional basis and allows in the future Angular web developers just to create web portals without having any clue what happens in the database underneath. That is the difference, and that is the reason why we have two REST services. The second REST service depends on the first REST service. Stepping back to my installation, that means to my identity information server, I can install the very last web portal. And the very last web portal is the portal that says install manager web application. What that is, it is the manager, that means the main data administration front end, in a web GUI. To do though, I can just start the installation. I sign into my database like always. I take the default name, the default encryption. I use anonymous again because I want to sign in with different users to the identity manager and not with single sign-on. I does have here the language selected, which is English. That is good with us. I use the standard IIS credentials for the update. And I install the complete tool. Pretty easy. And if this tool is installed, then I can do my very last test, again from the admin workstation. Again, admin workstation always, because the security of servers can be a challenge and we want to have it simple. So we always use the admin workstations for our tests. And I have at the end to start now the identity manager. There it is. And to say it clearly, the manager in the web is not 100% the manager that is to be installed on the workstation. The client tool does have more capabilities, but for smaller data changes, the manager in the web is pretty helpful. You see there is a username pre-configured. The English language is pre-configured. I need only the password. The way to set the password is the same than you saw it with the standard web portal. And here we are. After some seconds, I get a little bit more to see. But if you look into that front end, it gets pretty clear that not too much functionality is available. The reason for is that per se, you need permissions to do something in the manager, and the user I was just using here does not have these permissions to configure that. And having that said, I have to jump into the manager again. And what I need now is to assign Herwig to some system roles so that I can act with the manager. In that specific scenario, I just jump into assigning identity manager permissions to this Herwig user. You see there are many of these permissions available. What I will do is I select my employee Herwig and just assign everything. That makes it much easier. So take that specific user, assign one identity manager application roles, right click, assign all objects, and with that, storing all of these permissions, I should have now a super admin and enough rights to use that specific manager. That could be done, by the way, much more granular. But honestly, I don't want to show you here the permission model of the identity manager. And so I take the easiest way to make it work. And with that, I can directly start that manager. And what you see now, it's a lot of more permissions and a lot of more capabilities. For example, I can have a look at my employee objects and find, for example, here the employee Herwig. That is the employee I changed. It is filtered now. That's the reason why I only can see one object. But here is exactly the same what you saw in the manager before. If I don't use the filter option and click show all, I see all of them. This is the manager in the web. Again, around about 80% of the functionality of the real client tool manager. But for some administrative purposes, it is helpful, especially because I have nothing to install on, for example, end user machines or such, if I only want to make a short configuration on one of these data objects. With that, I have installed all the web portals and can work with them, of course.